TEDxUniversitasAirlangga 2021.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Najelaa Shihab, and I'm going to reflect together with you on my experience as an educator working with Yayasan Guru Belajar, who's specializing in teachers, principals, and superintendent competencies development. Based on my experience at Sekolah.mu, who's developing several learning programs for students since early childhood up until their secondary level, and also reflecting on my experience working, researching and advocating for education policy at Pusat Studi Pendidikan and Kebijakan. And we're going to talk about the most talked about topic in education, literacy. I think we can all agree that if we're talking about core competencies, for now or for the future, literacy will be the one that's most sought after and come up as the number one competencies that we want to develop in our students. And when we're talking about literacy, I think the most amazing part about this is that it's not an end on itself. The aim is never just to develop a high level of literacy competencies in our students, but also to use the competence in literacy to be a solid foundation to develop all the other core competencies for the futures. Without literacy, you cannot be an independent adult. Without literacy, you cannot be a reflective learner. Without literacy, you cannot develop any kind of innovations, or you cannot be an empowered member of a citizens in any country. But while the agreement that literacy is foundational skills are quite widespread after a lot of campaigning and effort from various stakeholders, the realizations that our literacy states are now at emergency level is not something that is believed in the current education ecosystems. I think most of us kind of feel satisfied with the fact that the participation rates of our students going into schools are very high. We forget that schooling doesn't mean learning. And we also forget that reading books does not mean that our students have already understand and able to comprehend all the informations that they've been learning about. Doesn't mean that when they are able to consume a certain amount of books that they will be the creators. They will be the one who will be able to express their opinions and feelings, and at the end become a better professionals that contribute to the economy, to the democracy of this country. If I want to put it in a very simple sentence, I think we forget that learning to read does not equal with the ability to be able to read for learning. That's two totally different concepts. If we're looking at the numbers of the achievement of Indonesian students right now, we'll see that if we assess their level of ability and their speed in learning to read, our ranks are not actually that bad compared to other students from different countries, even if we compare it to the achievement of students from developed countries. Through various processes, which mainly emphasize drilling, our students at the age of 6 or 7 years, especially in developed cities in Indonesia, have mastered the ability to decode words and able to read simple sentences. The problem comes after, when they actually need to be able to summarize, to make inference, to try to connect the experience of the information that they're reading about with their daily experience and implement it in their daily life. That's when the results of the PISA score, that's when the research or publications of all the graduates from our university starting to lag behind compared to other countries. So literacy is never about a sprint. It's never about developing earlier leader. It's actually about developing a more longer lasting reader who has the passion for learning, who has the ability to transform their whole learning process through whatever informations and data that they are learning about in literature. Literacy is always a representation of our education quality. But whenever we talk about quality, we can never forget the fact that there's always an embedded inequality issues. If we're talking about the achievement of literacy level, then we'll see a huge opportunity and achievement gap in our students' population. We're dealing with the fact that only less than 1% of our families frequently and regularly read to their students, to their children at home. And we're also dealing with the fact that there's a huge gap of resources between different schools, different madrasah, if you're talking about the variety of the literacy and learning resources in each institution. So each time I'm looking into solving literacy problem, I really want us to focus on the most marginalized students, the most marginalized children. Because even if the problem is hugely represented in this group, solving the literacy quality issues in this marginalized group will also mean the biggest hook and the biggest driver to close the achievement and the opportunity gap in Indonesian education ecosystem. I'll give you an illustration. A child who's been read frequently, or let's not talk about reading solely, who has a mom who talks frequently, use variety of vocabulary, and this doesn't have to be high level vocabulary, difficult terms in scientific situations. It can be as easy as a conversations about daily activities, conversations about different kinds of colors that they're observing in the surroundings. A child who's exposed to that many words a day will have 1 million more words or vocabulary compared to a child who's deprived of that kind of stimulation. And this 1 million word gap would mean a long-lasting hindrance in their ability to learn, in their ability to achieve a successful grade in different subjects throughout the schoolings, which will mean that all of this gap won't be able to be fixed, or the gap cannot be closed by any education experience once they enter primary and secondary schoolings. So if we're trying to fix the literacy issues, we need to start since the very young. We even need to start before the conception period. That's why I'm a strong believer in parenting educations. And when I'm talking about parenting educations, that is not only means interventions for the current parents, but also to the future parents, which probably most of you who's attending this event are categorized into. Becoming a better reader would means that you will be able to nurture the next generations of readers yourself. I think most of the common questions that I've been getting from students, even from teachers or lecturers, are whether reading in the digital era would means a different kind of activities compared to reading in a more conventional form. As simple as whether digital books is actually better than printed books. I think digital technology should not hinder preference for readings. The more information that we can get from the digital world will actually means that we need higher level of literacy. And that's where the problem in our society are actually very evident right now. In the current Indonesian ecosystems, where even in a non-digital world, the literacy level is not that high, when the overloaded informations, some of the manipulations of informations, and all the other motives that makes it very difficult to differentiate valid or reliable informations compared to the one that's loaded. Most of the actors in the ecosystems are not actually ready to deal with the complexity and the challenge of the digital literacy. And this is one of the most challenging tasks that we need to nurture in our children right now. We need to nurture their basic foundational literacy skills in a digital era where the challenges, all of the threats, all of the different motives of these digitalizations are not only already at the front door, but are actually have become the third culture in our classroom, in our bedrooms, and in every aspects of our students' life. Okay.
Okay, fokus. Fokus sama dah. Oke, posisinya Bu.
Okay.
Standby. Boleh ke kanan dikit. Oke, sip. Standby. 3, senyum dulu. 2, 1, and next.
Digitizing content is actually one of the innovations and experimentations that we've been doing at Sekolah.mu. And we've seen a huge increase in the students' level of engagement when they're dealing with contents that are relevant, when they're asked to read a material before the class and not during the class, and even during a self-paced and asynchronous sessions in our platform. So I'm really looking forward to more experimentations from your side on how to increase students' motivations to reading, to speaking, to any activities related to literacy that can happen digitally. The students' readiness to do any literacy activities in digital format is much higher than what we found out at teachers and parents level. In Yayasan Guru Belajar and Yayasan Rangkul Keluarga Kita, we're dealing with parents and teachers who are, in most part, are still very anxious about doing literacy activities through digital integration. And I think more examples of best practice, more capacity development for parents and for teachers to actually see the opportunities of doing digital integration in literacy activities are much needed in the ecosystems. If not, then we're not nurturing the kind of future reader, but we're actually building more blockers for students, for our children who actually have the preference to read, but have been neglected of their rights of reading because their exposure are only limited to the printed format. I know this is not a popular opinion because of course reading a printed book do have its advantage. But if we're going to nurture digital readers and future readers, then I believe we need to be more open-minded in seeing that any kind of book format, any kind of information format, even in a format that's probably not academic enough in the belief of many more conventional educators, will be the exact bridge that we need to nurture this preference to literacy activities. PSPK have also developed a community-led assessment we named Pemantik. The first version started in 2018, and we're launching the newest version in 2021. The benefit of this community-led assessment is that we can gather as many data as possible on our current children literacy level. And this feedback loop is essential for the ecosystem, because I think not all of us are actually exposed and understand the sense of urgency in solving these literacy issues. The more data we have about students at grade 4 level in primary schools who haven't able to master certain reading level, who's not getting the right interventions to help them move forward in their literacy level. It's an information that's needed to propel as many more of us to actually take action and do this literacy battle and become a proponent of more literacy-based activities at home and at school. I will, in the screen you will see an opportunity to be more involved in our Pemantik community-led assessment, which is a very easy to use assessment, and we're planning to publish the Indonesian Literacy Index annually and actually seen two things. The first one is our current level of literacy at a very early stage, from early leaders at 4 or 5 years of age up till the end of primary years. And the second purpose of this assessment is to actually identify which intervention, which part of the innovations that's led by the community and organization that actually makes a difference. Because there are a lot of initiatives, and you are probably one of the initiator of many education initiatives that focus on literacy, but we haven't really been able to crack which intervention works the best, which one that need to be scaled and adapted to different contexts, and having a more thorough understanding about where we are right now, developing a more comprehensive assessment on literacy and involving as many students, parents, teachers, as many of you who attend this event as part of this movement will be crucial for the futures of our literacy activities, but also for the futures of all the students that need to nurture the competence that's needed for the country. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope, at least I ignite certain needs to try to understand the issues more and to be able to involve more in literacy-based activities to enhance Indonesian education ecosystem.